Hey guys, today we're going to talk about repainting cars. I get a lot of questions on how do I do it, how do I get all the paint off, do I sand it, whatnot. So I figured I'd make a video. Today we're going to use the Carrera 124th Digital Corvette C7R. It's actually a lot easier than you might think. All you need is 91% isopropyl alcohol. You can get that at any local drugstore, and a Dremel tool with a small cutting tip on it. It's also convenient if you have a nice painting rack. This one's the Tamiya. The piece on the left holds the bodies, and the piece on the right holds the small parts. We also made some wooden dowel rod with alligator clips. That is to paint small parts. It just makes it easier to hold it in your hand while you spray it. Something else that's nice to have, and it's cheap, is a piece of styrofoam. You can stick your wooden dowel rod with your alligator clip into the styrofoam. It's a nice holder while your parts are drying. So here we go. You got your body removed from the chassis, you got your Dremel tool. So let's get to work. So flip the car over and you can see all the yellow circles. All those yellow circles need to be ground down to a stub. Once you grind them all down, you can start pulling the pieces off. You'll get the interior, the windshield, the taillights, anything that has a plastic melt mold to it has to be ground down and taken off of the body. Your goal is to have just the body, nothing else attached. Alright, here we have everything removed from the body. I would suggest putting all the small bits in a bag so you don't lose anything, because you cannot buy them separate from the manufacturer. Alright, now it's time to give your car a bath. Grab the bottle of 91% isopropyl alcohol and a clear lid or something similar. Open up the bottle, pour as much as you need to totally submerge the car in the isopropyl alcohol, and let it sit for anywhere from an hour to 3 hours. It all depends. Every car is different, but typically within an hour you can start scraping off the paint. I use an old toothbrush. It seems to work just fine. Okay, so now we have the car totally cleaned from the paint. It's down to the bare plastic. What I suggest everyone do is, once you have it totally cleaned off without any paint left, wash it with dish soap, scrub it real good, make sure you have any alcohol removed from the body, because I've not had the problem, but I would assume if you still had alcohol on the plastic when you tried to paint it, it would not work out. Now it's time for the fun stuff. Grab your primer. We typically use lacquers and acrylics. Just seem to be the easiest to work with. So here we have white primer lacquer. So we'll put the car on the body stand. We'll just give it a dusting of primer. I've just started doing this. I guess it helps the paint adhere better in the long run if you start with a dusting rather than just going straight to a full coat of primer. So once your dusting is dried for about an hour or so, go ahead and put a full coat of primer on. You always want to use light colors first. So here we've painted our car white, because if you use dark colors first, the white does not show up. White is kind of a shade of whatever the darker color is, so always paint your lighter colors first. You also see in this frame 3 different types of tapes to use. The tape on the left is the Tamiya masking tape, and the 2 tapes on the right are also Tamiya, but they're designed to make curves in your paint. So if you want to roll it up over a body line or something of that nature, it makes it easier to use, and it typically lays flat unless you go a little bit too extreme in your curves. It's really nice stuff to work with. Alright, now it's time to tape off your body. So you want to put the tape on the areas of the car that you want to be white when you're finished painting the car. So we decided to tape off a piece of the hood and to make our roof white. Once we have this all taped off, we'll take the Tamiya clear and we'll brush light strokes around the edges to help keep the body lines sealed, so when you spray it, you don't get any bleeding from the next coat of paint. Even when you do this, you can get the bleed in, but this normally is enough to keep most of the lines pretty straight. Let's get our next coat of paint on. So we chose a royal blue. So you spray the entire body. We usually do 2 coats. I know some people like to do maybe 3, possibly 4 light coats, but I'm always afraid if I do too many coats, the paint starts getting too thick and you lose the body lines and some of the depth of the features of the car. Lacquer paint typically dries pretty quick. I'd still give it at least 3 hours, if not 6, before you tried to handle the car at all. You don't want to leave any fingerprints in your fresh paint job, because then you just got to start all over. So once you have the tape removed, you can see how well you sealed in the body lines and how much runoff you get. Like I said, you're always going to get some. It's tough to not get any. As you can see on our hood, we didn't quite get the job done. I always make myself feel better by saying after about 2 or 3 races, the body's not going to look this beautiful anymore anyhow. So just make it look nice going around the track and don't sweat the fine details. Once your car is thoroughly dried, you can start applying your decals. We use decals from a company out of Australia. They're typically pretty nice decals. They're nice water slide. They go on really easy. Rarely do they rip. I can't remember one ripping. Sometimes they'll wrinkle up when you spray your clear coat, and the way that we've beat that in the wrinkling part of the decal is to brush on a layer of Tamiya clear over all the decals first and let that set up for, I don't know, a day, 6 hours, 8 hours, something, so it's nice and dry before we add our final coat of clear. Okay, now it's time for final assembly. So put your pieces in order. Hopefully you paid attention when you took the model apart, that you know what order things came apart in. I know when I did this the first time, I put the interior in before I put the rear taillights in, so I had to grind it all back out and put it in correctly. So make sure you pay attention to the order that the parts came out before you totally just bag everything up. Okay, now that it's mostly assembled, you can see the shiny spots where the yellow dots used to be. That's the epoxy resin we use to put it back together. So once everything's pretty hardened and ready to go, you can attach your chassis and do your final assembly of the mirrors, the wing, and screwing the chassis in. So here you have our final product all put back together, ready to race. It's not perfect, but it looks really good, and like I said before, once you have 2 or 3 races, it's going to be banged up, beat up. So if you have an imperfection here or there, it's not the end of the world. It's still going to be the coolest car on the track. So if you have any questions, feel free to post them in the comments down below. Visit us on Facebook under Cincyslots or our webpage at Cincyslots.com.